The stories shared on It Takes Balls are unique to the individual sharing. Always speak with your trusted medical provider for treatment options specific to you. Welcome back to It Takes Balls, presented by Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. My guest today is joining me from summer almost. I am joining in the almost winter. Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And what I'm talking about there is Matt is another Australian guest. So Matt, thank you for joining from down under.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here and talking to our colleagues over in the States.
Sweet. Well, let's talk about, your testicular cancer story. And before that, though, let's talk about a little bit about who you are. I don't know how much you can share. You do have kind of a private job, but what can you share about who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I guess by way of background, I work an office job. I live just outside of Sydney. I spent most of my career living in Sydney. For those that don't know too much about Australia, we basically live all near the beach. So our whole world is dominated by getting out in the surf, getting on the sands. It's just how we live down under. So most of my time in summer and even in winter is spent down there, getting on my mountain bike, getting out. Australians are pretty outdoorsy, so we don't like to be caged in, and that's how I've kind of lived my life over the last 35 years. So I'm pretty blessed to be here and get to enjoy all the amazing things that Australia has to offer.
For sure. And I told my my last Australian guest as well that my parents love the Queensland chicken salad from Outback. We're big Outback fans, so that's about as close as we'll get to Australia probably. But anyway, let's talk about your testicular cancer story. I know leading up to your diagnosis, you kind of had a weird, like, curvy road that didn't quite, say that testicular cancer was it from the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. Look, it all came... caught me off guard, right? So I had around 6 months of really bad back pain, and as most guys do, I kind of ignored it over that period. I was going for treatment. I was seeing my doctor and telling her about it. I was going for massages, things like that, but I never really got to the root cause of it. So over a period of about 6 months, it got progressively worse. One moment really sticks out was when I was going on a bushwalk in the famous Blue Mountains here outside of Sydney. And I got to the top and I basically collapsed, and all my friends were like, "Whoa, you're so unfit," and giving me a hard time about it. I'm like, "Just leave me here. I'm not going to make it any further." And to be fair, they did walk off, but then about 2 minutes later, they felt a bit guilty and came back for me. But it was at that point I was like, yeah, something's not right. My Apple Watch was a big contributor to working out something was wrong. So it was always telling me that I was having irregular heart rhythms. My heart was just always racing. Over this period, probably for a couple of years, my blood pressure just kept going up and up, and my meds kept going up. So at the start of 2024, I actually jumped on Ozempic. And the goal was to lose some weight to try and get healthier, to hopefully bring these conditions under control. I lost quite a bit of weight, around 20 kilos in 4 months. And during that period, my symptoms got worse. And then I was paranoid. My back pain was caused by that. So eventually I went and saw a good friend of mine who's a chiropractor, and he had a look at me and he said, "Matt, like if you find that you lose any feeling in your leg, you need to go get these scans." He took my phone out of my hand. He wrote the scans down in my phone. Sure enough, 3 days later, I woke up one day and couldn't walk properly. And that's when I really went and sought some help. So that's kind of how we started. And then from there, I went and got those scans done. And I had a CT scan done with contrast. I did a CT scan first, right? So I was laying on the table. The technician came out and said, how long have you had back pain for? And I said, about 6 months. And he said, I think we've found the reason why you've been in so much pain. And I was like, okay, something's not right. At that moment, my whole world and life flashed before my eyes, because I knew deep down something was pretty serious. They came back straight away, did a CT with contrast, and within about for 4 hours, I had a call from my doctor saying that they found a or actually at that time it was not diagnosed as a very large tumor, but a very long tumor, about 14 centimeters long by 2 centimeters. And they said it was a sarcoma. It was growing in my psoas muscle, and I needed to go urgently to Sydney to a hospital that specialized in muscle cancers. And that's essentially how I got diagnosed, right? So up until this period, I thought I had a rare muscle cancer, and that is how we were going forward. So I can talk a little bit more about that, or I can,
For sure, yeah. I mean, what was that like, thinking that you had a sarcoma? I have to admit, I don't know too much about sarcomas or what the prognosis is for that, but I mean, talk about the initial, like, hearing that news.
Yeah, so I was kind of in shock. I remember just writing notes, and I actually still have these notes on my computer. I've never closed the Word document for when my doctor was telling me what they've found. And for me, when I heard sarcoma, I didn't think cancer. I didn't know what a sarcoma was. It was only once I put it in Google and it said sarcoma is a cancer, I was like, oh, okay, I've got cancer. So at the time, I wasn't too worried, but then I went that very next day to see a surgeon who specialized in sarcomas, and that's when he really explained the full seriousness that I was in. So by that, he said the tumor I had wasn't pencil sized, it wasn't long, it was actually football sized. It was at that time, I think something like 7 or 8 inches long by 5 or 6 inches, and it was growing in my retroperitoneal and into my psoas muscle. The complication was it was growing along encapsulating my femoral nerve, which supplies the nerves to my thigh and knee, which is where I had a lot of the pain. So he basically explained to me that sarcomas are really dangerous. You're likely to relapse within 2 years. Survival rates are 40 to 50%. So it was essentially, we've got to have this surgery ASAP. We're going to have to take your femoral nerve. We have to take parts of your intestines, your kidney, a whole heap of muscles, because if they leave any behind, it will come back. And it's at that point I said, well, look, can't we do chemo? Like, normally most people, I'm begging for chemo. He said to me, chemo's off the table. It won't respond. So yeah, that was a really hard moment. And that's when I kind of contemplated my whole life. And I'm like, why did I wait so long? What did I do this for? I should have sought help earlier. So at that point, things were pretty dire, to be honest. We were praying for a miracle. We went through about 2 weeks of tests to get me ready for it. This major surgery. It was going to be about 14-hour surgery. And it's then at that point, we finally got the biopsy results back. And it came back as testicular cancer. And my surgeon said, this is the most amazing news you could ever get. So I don't know.
So at some point, did they stick a needle into your back to do this biopsy?
Yeah, so I was on my stomach, and they did it under CT guided. And that was probably one of the hardest procedures I've ever had done. Not because it was painful, but having a long needle going through your back. I remember I started to lose focus and control in that session. I had to stay still. And I just started singing. And I'm not a singer, but the whole room was listening to me pump out Miley Cyrus for some reason. I don't know why it came to my head, but I was singing Party in the USA. So it's a bit ironic. Now I'm talking to an American.
That's funny. That's a good song.
It is.
So what was the timeline of this whole thing? I know you said it was like a day or so later that you went from the surgeon or to the surgeon. How long was it like till the biopsy came back to, that you were thinking like, oh my gosh, I only have a 40, 50% chance of living with this sarcoma, to, oh my gosh, it's this amazing news, it's testicular cancer instead?
Yeah. So I was sent to the surgeon after 1 day. Within 4 days, I had a biopsy done. Over a 2-week period, I was doing a heap of scans and tests to get ready for the surgery. It was 4 days before the surgery, so I had to do the cleansing of your intestines and so forth, because they were going to have to remove it and potentially give me a stoma, temporarily at the very least. And it was the drive home after we had the pre-meeting with the surgeon. I was in a pretty somber state that I was told I could basically just be on liquids for the next 4 days, and who knows when I could eat again. We stopped at a KFC on the way home, on the drive home, and that's when he called me. So this all happened over a period of 3 weeks. And then it was literally, all right, you need to go see an oncologist tomorrow because you need to start chemotherapy straight away. And this is your chance to actually beat it.
What's your support system? Like who's in your corner as this is all happening?
Yeah, so surrounded by my family. I've been very lucky that, look, we haven't mostly been touched by cancer in our lifetime. So I was one of the first in the family. So everyone did rally behind me. My brother, sister, parents, there every step of the way. I had an amazing group of friends and colleagues. I had so many people come out and just back me. Which was a really big deal for me because although I'm a pretty outgoing kind of person, I've often thought I didn't have this massive network of people. So to have everyone come out of the woodwork was really amazing. And those 3 weeks where I thought I had a sarcoma, things were dire. Like I was questioning everything. I'd let Google get the better of me and really saw what outcomes would happen. I was comparing myself to medical journals because really I had this huge tumor growing inside of me. I thought I was done for, right? How can you recover from something so large?
Yeah, that's insane. When you say football, are you talking about an American football? Or are you talking about a rugby?
Yeah.
Is it a rugby ball? What do they call that?
Yeah, we call it a football as well, but it's pretty similar to, say, an NFL ball. I would say bigger, though, because literally over the next probably 4 weeks before I started chemo, it was growing like, I reckon from between I was diagnosed and when I started chemo, it grew inches, right, in both directions. So my kidney was up into my lungs. Everything was displaced. There was just no room. And I'm often asked, how did I not notice this big football-sized tumor, especially when I tell people I got testicular cancer, because their first thought is my ball was the size of a football. But I actually had no, say, stage 1 symptoms of testicular cancer, so no lumps, swelling, anything like that in my balls. I only had back pain, and that was my warning sign, I guess, and I had no idea that was a sign of testicular cancer.
Wow. And I mean, with the weight loss that you were experiencing at the same time, it's probably easy to write off as like, oh, well, my body's going through these changes anyway, so it's probably just part of that.
Yeah, exactly right. I was at the fittest I'd been in my life, right? I was dropping weight really quickly, which at the time I thought was Ozempic. In hindsight, it might have been the tumor, but it was just all coincidental. But I was putting everything down to that medication. At the time, it was very topical, Ozempic, and everyone was very cautious of side effects, which is still something I worry about today. So by no means do I condone the use of it, and it's not medical advice or anything like that, but it ultimately was the reason I believe why I got diagnosed, because I wouldn't have noticed that big tumor, right? I was quite pudgy. And the reason I was getting pudgy and bigger was because there was a tumor growing inside of me. It wasn't actually fat.
Yeah. So, okay. So you get this great news in quotes that it's testicular cancer. And then you start chemo. And I know you did what you said was like a trial version of it.
Yeah. So I had a really great oncologist up in Sydney who focused in testicular cancer. And part of his work was to do a trial around germ cell cancers. And what they did was they used the standard BEP chemo, which most people get. In this case, it's normally the 5 days you have the full suite, and then on that second week you have the bleo. The third week you have the bleo again. In my case, we skipped the third week and just started the full suite again. So we did that for 4 cycles, and then after I'd gone through those 4 cycles over each 2-week period, we did the last bleos. So I did I think 4 bleo weeks of catch up for the ones that I missed. So the aim was to hit it harder more quickly to see if it responded better. And in my case, we had a progress check about halfway through, and in that check, it showed that my tumour had shrunk by more than half, which, given it was about 9 inches long at that point, that was a pretty amazing feat, with the goal of hopefully saving my leg. So one thing I didn't touch on was, if I was going to lose that femoral nerve, I was going to lose my ability to walk properly again. My body would adapt, but I would still never be the same after that, and I might need an aid to walk. So the whole goal of trying to do chemo now was to shrink this tumour down, get it off my kidney to hopefully save my kidney, save my bowel, but most importantly, it was growing along the main aorta that supplies blood to your legs, along my spine, and it was stuck to that. So we wanted to get it off that.
So a couple notes here I want to point out. So you did not initially have your orchiectomy. You started straight with chemo, right?
Yeah, that's right. So my story's a little bit unique because we did chemo straight up. We did no surgery. And the reason for that was the tumor was so large, right? This surgery is going to be really complicated. So chemo was the best chance to try and clean things up a little bit before they went in. I also had no lump on my testy. So we went and had an ultrasound done, and that's when they found a tiny little lump there that had scarred over. So it was at that point that we didn't worry so much about the removal. It had already spread. At this point, it was growing in my psoas muscle out of my lymph nodes. So there was no real reason to go straight for the surgery, but rather get the chemo, do 4 cycles, which is a little bit more than most do. But I was in a high risk category given the size and how aggressive it was. So in my case, I was diagnosed with embryonal carcinoma, which is quite a unique one, especially when it's 100% embryonal carcinoma. I had no teratoma or anything like that in mine. So it was a really fast growing type. But the positive was that it generally responds really well to chemo, and in my case it did.
And just because I know sometimes people ask in the comments and I forget to ask the guests, what stage were you? Yeah,
so I was stage 2C for testicular cancer staging. And to be honest, it wasn't something we really spoke about at the start of the process. Everything happened so quickly, given the significance of disease I had. So we never sort of sat down and had the chat about my staging. It was just, right, you start chemo on Monday, you got to do this. There was no real chat about what my future looked like, what my staging was and stuff like that. It's only in the last few months that I've been having those chats with my oncologist and being like, well, actually, what stage was I? As I start to tell my story a bit more wider.
So, okay, so you had that ultrasound that showed that the scarring. Was that after the start of chemo or was that before the start of chemo? I'm sorry, you might have said I just got confused.
No, that's all right. Yeah, so I had it just before I started chemo. So we went through the process of putting some samples in just in case I had to go down the IVF route in the future. So it was at that point they did the ultrasound, found the tumor, and then confirmed that was the primary source. Because prior to that, they assumed this large tumor growing in my abdomen was the primary. So it was actually a secondary. And then the question was, had it spread through my body? So we did the PET scans and so forth. And they found some suspicious lesions on my liver. So then we just, after that, went straight into chemo, and it was just, let's get this chemo done and then get you well enough to have a pretty major operation, which is where we got to.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the decision to do the trial of chemo. Were you given the option of doing the traditional, or was it only ever the trial given to you?
Yeah, so they basically limited my expectations around getting into the trial. So not everyone got in. They wanted a specific group of people. And at that point, I was told that I had quite a rare type of testicular cancer. I had one that's really aggressive. So I wanted to try anything I could. So I was really crossing my fingers to hopefully get into it. I could have asked to go down the standard route. There was some additional risks, obviously, with getting it, about how my body would respond to getting so much chemo quickly. I went through significant additional tests and surveys and things throughout that process just to see how I was responding. But luckily, my body held up just with a few war wounds to handle that chemo. And I could have gone down the traditional route, but I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to get it, because it did work.
Yeah. What was your experience like with that expedited regimen? Now post chemo, I'm sure you've had the opportunity to compare, war stories with other guys. So how does yours kind of compare to the other guys you've talked to?
Yeah, look, I think I had a pretty tough ordeal. So I think the biggest complication I had with getting the chemo so quickly was my body never had a chance to recover between cycles. I was told at the start of chemo that I couldn't get a port put in, mainly because of the size of my tumor and where it was. I was at a really high risk of getting a large clot. And at that point, he said, you're about a 1 in 10 chance of that happening, which would be life-threatening. At that point, I'd just been told I was 1 in 600,000 for the type of testicular cancer I got. So 1 in 10 seemed too good of an odd. So we opted against it. But in hindsight, it was probably the hardest part of chemotherapy because I was getting the cannulas put in my arms. Basically, every day was an ordeal. I used to beg them to leave it in, and we used to try and keep it in 2 or 3 days. But it got to a point where they couldn't cannulate me well anymore. I developed clots in my arms. I had no working veins anymore. And it was something that really rattled me mentally, because I was never scared of the chemo. I was scared of the cannulas, because I knew how tough it would be. Sometimes it would take over an hour and a half to get a cannula put in. So yeah, it really rocked me. And that was probably the hardest part of doing that trial. I don't think it would have mattered if I did the traditional path either. It's just the reality of what I was dealing with. But otherwise, comparing it to others that are going through it now, there's not much of a difference, right? The chemo is tough stuff, no matter how quickly you get it. It's in my mind, it's the quicker you get it done, the quicker you can kind of move on. So I get asked at the end of every survey, would I recommend the trial to get it expedited? And I always tick yes.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing. What was you mentioned your body never had time to recover. Yeah, I'm presuming that you lost your hair like everyone. I mean, you got a nice mustache now for those who are just listening and you can't see it. But what was your experience with nausea, vomiting, brain fog, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so I was definitely one of those guys that thought, I'm not going to lose my hair. It was day, I think, 12, and I still had it. I'm like, yes, I'm one of those rare ones that exist, the unicorns. The hair quickly packed up and left. First was the beard. I normally have a big beard, but at the moment I'm growing a moustache for a cancer charity here that supports guys going through testicular cancer. It's called Movember. Essentially, guys grow a moustache in support of the cause. That's why I'm rocking this at the moment. But look, the beard went, hair went. The main issues I had, I was never once sick during chemo, which is pretty amazing. I was popping those tablets pretty frequently to put it to bay. I was actually cautious of losing a lot of weight during chemotherapy, but as I think most guys find out, it can actually be the opposite. I put on 10 kilos in 8 weeks, I think it was. I was eating like no tomorrow because of the steroids that I was on. I do credit the steroids to really limiting the side effects. I had nothing really major. The biggest thing was I just had no energy. I got to probably the 3rd cycle. I couldn't even pull together a sentence. I couldn't hold a conversation. I couldn't remember anything. It was just like I had regressed about 30 odd years. So that was the biggest thing that I dealt with during the chemotherapy. Other than that, I was never sick. I had a great appetite. I would sit there and order fast food to the oncology ward and eat it during sessions. I was fine. So I know everyone's experience is different.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of similar too. Like, even now I feel like I get a little bit tongue tied. Trying to take like what's up here in my brain and get it to my mouth is a little bit more difficult than it was before chemo, which is part of why I started this podcast, so I could, practice. It's the gym for my brain to my mouth.
100%. Yeah. It's only once you start talking again, having those conversations, that you really build it up again. I'd always been a strong public speaker, but I finished my chemo in November 2024. So we're basically on 12 months, and I feel like I'm probably 70% where I was in regards to speaking and memory and things like that. So in the last 5 months, I'd say I've progressed significantly, which has been great. But they do generally say around 12 months is when you start to see some pretty significant improvements.
Yeah. Well, you're doing great now, and it'll continue to improve. If I didn't know you had testicular cancer or chemo, I wouldn't even know that anything was different. So chemo ended. You had this football-sized tumor inside you. Had it shrunk at all after chemo?
Yeah, so we finished chemo. We did a final scan, and it was about 1/3 its original size, which was an amazing outcome. At that point, we didn't know if there was a teratoma inside it because it hadn't shrunk up, obviously, fully. So we gave myself 6 weeks. I met with a urologist, a surgeon here that specialized in quite rare cases. I had a multidisciplinary team working with me. So all these people had been with me since day one, since when I was diagnosed with a sarcoma. They knew about me, and it's just they moved me along to different people. So at that point, I was really hopeful that because my tumor had shrunk so much that I could have a robotic retroperitoneal lymph node dissection and have them remove the tumor then. But in that first session, my hopes were dashed with the surgeon. He basically said my surgery would be one of the most complex that they do in urology. We sort of came up with a plan. We wanted to get me in ASAP before Christmas because it was a ticking time bomb there to get it done. We came up with a plan. So essentially, he needed to go in and do an open retroperitoneal lymph node dissection to remove those lymph nodes. We had to remove the tumor, which was growing along the aorta in my spine. It was growing on my femoral nerve. So I begged him to save my femoral nerve. I begged him to save my kidney because it was growing along the tubes there. My psoas muscle was unfortunately always going to be a casualty. For those that don't know what your psoas muscle is, but they're two muscles that go up to your spine from your hips, and they basically give you core stability. We were hopeful to try and save as much of that as we could. We then had to deal with the liver. At that point, they weren't too worried about it, but that was something that came out after the surgery. So we had a couple of weeks there. I was told it was going to be about a 9-hour surgery. They were going to have 3 surgeons come in working on at the same time because there was just so many different things going on that they had to deal with. And then even more things came out in the surgery.
So, having part of your psoas muscle removed, have you been able to live a normal life? Has it affected your ability to hike through the bush?
Yeah, so I might jump forward to what actually happened in the surgery. So when I woke up in the ICU, and the first thing I said to the surgeon, he was looking at me, I said, "Can I walk? Am I going to be able to walk again?" He said, move your leg. And I moved my leg, and he's like, "You'll be fine." So that kind of gave me some reassurance. But when they went in, they basically had to remove the majority of the psoas muscle. They ended up having to do a liver resection as well. And then they also had to do a hernia operation because of the damage the tumor had caused in my groin. So they were all additional things. They ended up putting a stent in to my kidney to try and save it. And they saved my femoral nerve. So at this point now, I am getting strength back, but I've lost a lot of feeling in the leg. I have lost strength, the reality is, with the removal of the femoral nerve, but I am getting better. It doesn't limit me in any way, but look, life after cancer is different. It was only 5 weeks ago that I fell, which I would never have done before, but that was because I can't fully lift that leg up all the way. And I hurt myself. So that's something that wouldn't have happened, I believe, if I had my full psoas muscle, but it's just something I've got to be cautious of. But it doesn't stop me. I'm getting more active and getting back on my feet. I don't think I'll ever be a Usain Bolt and running sprints, but I don't think it's ever going to impact my life. Whereas if I went through with that sarcoma operation, I'd never be the same again.
Yeah. Wow. What is your, do you see that doctor again who was specialized in the sarcoma, or, your care team who was there from the beginning? What do they say about, your journey from thinking that you were, had this dire situation to kind of, we'll say, best case scenario in quotes?
Yeah. So look, we never met with him again. He obviously hears my case at the multidisciplinary meetings, but he's actually quite a famous surgeon here in Australia, and there's an ER show that they do here, a medical show, and he stars on it. And it was a few weeks after I'd finished chemo that I was watching TV, and he popped up, and I went, oh my gosh. And he was treating a lady that had the exact type of mass that I did, where I did. And unfortunately for her, she relapsed a year later, and that's why she was back. So it really hit home how lucky I was. She couldn't walk properly. She had a walking stick now. So to be faced with having that hurdle at 34 was going to be pretty tough. But everyone that I speak to, my medical team, does say it's basically been a miracle story every step of the way. And even up until recently, after getting away and doing some travel and having my 3-month scan post surgery, they found an additional mass growing in my metatarsal area. So that was quite a big scare, but luckily we waited 3 months, did another scan, and they believe it is my thymus regrowing from the chemo. So we're monitoring that at the moment.
Oh no! Well, hopefully it's nothing nefarious going on. Okay, so yeah, you're 12 months out now. Mentally, what have the last 12 months been like? I'm sure it was tough when you took that fall that you would not have otherwise done. But I mean, overall, the last year.
Yeah, so it's been a wild journey. So basically, I spent 4 days in the ICU and about 2 weeks in a ward. I got discharged Christmas Eve last year, which we saw again as a Christmas miracle. And then in February this year, I had an additional surgery to try and save that kidney. So it's been a little bit of a longer journey than most go through. So it's only since February this year that I've been trying to get back to normal. So I took nearly a year off work, and I went back to work this year in a part-time capacity. But I spent a lot of time quite upset around the fact that I got it in the first place, but then also having regret about not catching it and dealing with it earlier. And it was around probably March this year that I had so many people support me. What can I do to give back? And my first thing turned to, well, I know how much I struggled with getting diagnosed and understanding it all. How can I help others that are going through it? And that's when I started to sharing my story. Like, guys don't generally like to talk about this stuff. I stopped shying away from it, and rather than saying I had cancer, I started saying I had testicular cancer. And I think that actually helped me process it all. So I went on a journey of telling my story on TikTok, and it started off really slow. I started with a couple of people on live streams talking about it, and then I started putting out more videos, and then I found that there was a group of guys that really wanted to know more about it. And that's when things kind of exploded, and I went to having 400 to 500 people on my lives. And it was a big step for me because I'd never really want to talk about this part of me, right? It's a really private experience. Now I was telling the whole world about it. And it was, as I like to call it, free therapy for me to be able to talk about my story and what happened. I'd put away and compartmentalized a lot of these things that had happened to me over that period, and they all started to come out as people asked questions. So mentally, I believe I've never been stronger over the last sort of 7 months. Am I rattled when I have to go for scans? 100%, especially with the recent scares. but the will that I have to kind of help out other guys and be on forums like here telling my story. And it was actually a guy that had come through on my page that told me to start listening to this podcast. And it was only then that my eyes really opened up. Because prior to that, when I was getting treatment, I didn't talk to anyone. Wasn't on any forums. I wasn't listening to any videos. I was kind of secluded.
That's awesome. Shout out to whoever posted that in the comments. I wish we knew.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. I had TikTok and I deleted it when it was banned here for a while.
Yeah. Smart.
No, that's great. Yeah, free therapy, and it's awesome that you've got an audience of 400 to 500 or that listen and want to know more. And I took a peek at your TikTok from the outside view, not logged in, and you do have a good following and view count. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that's come out of it for me is the outreach now. So I wake up to at least 3 or 4 messages from other guys around the world going through it. And for me, it's almost like I'm doing marketing to kind of get my message out there, and then people come to me with questions. So it at times can be overwhelming, but at the same time, I think about how important it is to help out others, because there's just not a lot of stuff out there. If you search for videos around breast cancer and things like that, there's a lot out there. Girls are far more comfortable talking about it, but for guys, they don't. So I am grateful that I can help out other people going through it, and I can give really targeted answers to questions they have. And look, the most common one is, am I going to lose my hair? I'm going through just one cycle. Am I going to lose my hair? And I always have to say, yeah, look, it will go. And they're like, but it's day 12. And I say, no, well, I was day 12 too. So it'll grow back.
For sure. What advice do you have for somebody who has just been diagnosed? I'm sure you give advice a lot on your lives, but maybe something new, or maybe something that you like to share on TikTok.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest piece of advice I give is it's around firstly the detection piece. Like, if you have been diagnosed with testicular cancer, you have done the right thing. Like, you have caught it, right? So don't be too disheartened by that. But the biggest goal with it is just getting better. The reality is it has a really high success rate, as we all know. Not everyone is that lucky. I have a lot of people that come through that have lost a loved one to it. So it's never lost on me how lucky we are. But the reality is you've got to just keep your eye on the prize. For me, it was really easy to do that because I'd gone from being told I had a sarcoma to now having testicular cancer. So I don't know how many guys celebrate getting testicular cancer, but I was one of them. So I never lost fact how lucky I was to have chemotherapy as a treatment option. So when I talk to guys now that are like, I don't want to do chemo, I just can't do it, I'm like, count yourself lucky that that's on the table. And the reality is most guys will live a long and happy life after that. So don't lose fact to that, and listen to your medical team. They've seen it all before. Although it feels like you're the first person going through it, they do it day in, day out. And you've only got to look around the room in your oncology ward to see other guys sitting there going through the exact thing you're going through.
Great advice. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap things up?
Yeah, nothing in particular. One thing I say to all my supporters is a bit of a catchphrase, and it's to enjoy every sunset. And by that, I mean, and not to make it corny or cliche, but the reality is my life flipped on a dime. So it's really important to remember how lucky we are to have options available to us, and enjoy every day for what it is, because tomorrow's never promised, and it really sets your perspective in life.
Awesome. Where can people find you on TikTok? What's your username?
So a really creative name. It's something I'm most proud of, but it's One Tough Nut Matt. And that's what I am, and there's a lot of other tough nuts around. But you can find me there, and feel free to reach out with any questions.
Perfect. We'll put that in the description below. Matt, thank you so much for being on It Takes Balls.
I appreciate the time, and glad I can share my story.
For more information and resources for your testicular cancer journey, visit testicularcancerawarenessfoundation.org.